Thank you. Yeah, hello, welcome. Thank you for staying for the lecture. I know that some of you already need to go home, so I really appreciate you staying here. But yeah, let's start with a quick show of hands. How many of you have already played the Thaumaturge? You guys. All right. All right. No worries if you haven't. I already was asked about it before the lecture. This talk will be mostly spoiler-free. There will be few light reviews, but hopefully by the end of it, I will encourage you to play the game by yourselves. Let's set the mood. So I will play you something. I hoped for audio, but the visuals are really nice. So, the Thaumaturge is a 2024 isometric RPG developed by Fool's Theory and published by 11 Bits. It was set in 1905 Warsaw, Poland, so historical setting, and it blends role-playing and investigative gameplay with richly detailed turn-based combat system. Players assume the role of Victor, with a W, Szulski, the titular Thaumaturge, someone who can perceive hidden truths and command supernatural beings known as salutors. The game explores deep themes of mystery, historical tension, and psychological complexity. And it was developed by Fool's Theory, as I already mentioned, a team of very passionate developers with diverse academic and creative backgrounds, ranging from art history, philosophy, and ethnography to linguistics and cultural studies. United by love of storytelling and history, together we've built the world of the Thaumaturge under the watchful eye of our creative director, Karolina Kuzia. Hey, Karolina. Yeah, I'm very lucky to be part of this team. I've been in game development for over 12 years now, working mostly on AAA RPGs. I contributed to The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077 at CD Projekt Red. I served as lead quest designer on the Thaumaturge. My studies in history of art and theater shaped how I approach narrative design. When I'm nervous, I tend to go off on really long tangents and ramble, so please bear with me. But yeah, enough about me. Today I'm here to discuss how alternate versions of history can serve as a very powerful storytelling framework, a tool, through the lessons we learned while building the Thaumaturge. So let's begin with our first lesson, setting the stage and the historical context that shaped our story. The Thaumaturge takes place in Warsaw in the year 1905. Poland did not exist as an independent country back then. As a result of partitions, Poland was divided between three empires: Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. Warsaw itself was a city under the rule of Russian Empire and a place of profound tensions, politically, culturally, and socially. While recreating 1905 Warsaw, we got to build incredibly detailed environments based on thorough research, often recreating places which no longer exist now. As you know, Warsaw was pretty much destroyed during the Second World War, and not many actual buildings from the 1905 survived. At the time, Warsaw was transforming. Industrial expansion brought modernization and wealth, yet left many in dire poverty. Grand Art Nouveau mansions stood beside slums. It was a place where opulence met oppression and change was inevitable. Rapid industrialization turned Warsaw into a booming industrial hub. Textile mills, metalworks, and chemical factories employed thousands, drawing in workers from rural areas. The newly built railways linked the city to other parts of the Russian Empire and Europe, accelerating the economic growth. Yet, as you can imagine, this growth came at a cost, as many working-class citizens lived in poverty, overcrowded workers' quarters, poor sanitation, and long, grueling hours in unsafe conditions painted a grim picture behind the scenes of progress. Social revolutions were gaining momentum, with movements advocating for workers' rights, women's suffrage, and political reform. Imperial tensions added a further pressure to the city's social fabric. Warsaw was a strategic node in rivalry between the Russian, Austro-Hungarian, and German empires, all vying for control over Central and Eastern Europe. As nationalist sentiments grew across Europe, many Poles who were denied their own state over a century began to rally around the idea of self-determination. Class struggle, economic inequality, industrialization, revolutionary movements, social unrest, workers' strikes, imperial tensions, nationalism. Sounds kind of familiar, right? It is a quite fertile ground for a compelling narrative, and especially relevant today as they really resonate with contemporary problems we are facing every day. This brings us to our first lesson. The setting is not just a scenery. It's not a collection of visual elements, names, places meant to set the mood. The setting does much more than provide atmosphere. It shapes the story's tone, drives its conflicts, and reflects its character's struggles. When setting the stage, don't be afraid to look outside of generic and well-known settings. Look for something that amplifies the main conflicts of the story you want to tell. Because when you choose a setting that fits directly into the story's conflict, you're not just building a world, you're creating a living, dynamic force that elevates every part of your narrative. So, let's examine how the setting influenced and inspired themes and conflicts of the game in our lesson 2. Themes and conflicts. Our hero, Victor, comes back to Warsaw after many years in exile. The mermaid city's wayward son, now back to say his last goodbye to his estranged father. He steps off the train at Dworzec Wiedeński, a place that no longer exists in the present day, but was meticulously recreated for the game based on photographs from the period. 15 years have passed since Victor last walked these streets. And as he makes his way into the city, We, as players, walk beside him, seeing Warsaw through his eyes for the first time. Victor returns to his childhood home. Once it was a place of warmth and privilege, now heavy with silence and memories. Though born into a wealthy family, his life was shaped not by comfort, but by distance. Years spent in Paris have turned him into a stranger in the house that raised him. His father was a Thaumaturge too. And now, with his death, Victor confronts not just the ghosts of memories, but the legacy of power and expectations he once tried to flee. As Victor traverses the changing streets of Warsaw, the city slowly begins to reveal its many faces. And in doing so, it forces him to confront his own. Each district he passes through peels back another layer of memories, his identity and long-buried truths. The journey through city becomes a journey inward, as Victor uncovers not only the shifting nature of Warsaw, but the hidden fractures with his own past. Victor moves through vastly different worlds. He attends lavish high society gatherings where Russian aristocrats discuss Poland's uncertain future over fine wine. Yet he also ventures into city bars and back streets where workers and revolutionaries plot rebellion. Economic inequality ignited revolutionary fervor, especially during the 1905 Russian Revolution, which sent shockwaves through Warsaw. Strikes and protests erupted as Poles resisted harsh Russification and demanded independence. Underground groups like Polish Socialist Party gained momentum, calling for both social change and national liberation. Amid the unrest, Victor finds himself drawn into the turbulent worlds of politics. Yet, as it always is, Russian authorities responded to the unrest with brutal crackdowns. Mass arrests, public executions, and the violent dispersal of demonstrations became commonplace. And Victor, through his choices, might feel the weight of repression firsthand. Victor's story mirrors that of Warsaw. As you can see, it's a tale shaped by identity, agency, and power. The city's struggles reflect his own, making his personal journey inseparable from the fate of the place he once called home. Which brings us to our next lesson. Key themes and conflicts of the setting should fit the overall conflicts of the narrative. A compelling story doesn't just happen in a world, it emerges from it. In Victor's case, the tensions within Warsaw, class divisions, political unrest, rising nationalism, and cultural fragmentation directly reflect his internal conflict. A man torn between two worlds, grappling with a fractured identity, estranged from his past and uncertain of his place in the rapidly changing world. But let's talk about player and how they fit in all of this. Victor is player's guide to historical, cultural, and political landscape of the Warsaw in the year 1905. Even though his character is predetermined, with his inherent flaw, pride, player has some ability to customize their Victor, both through in-game choices and cosmetic items. it's actually really important to allow player to fully embody the character and immerse themselves in their world and story we're presenting through customization like that. But Victor's journey is at its core a very personal one, a confrontation not just with his past, but with the man he has become and the legacy he cannot escape. He attends his father's funeral to say his last goodbyes and realizes that Thaumaturge has shaped his life thus far, and his own pride nearly doomed him. He sought to bind salutors to his will, attempting to surpass his father's legacy, and failed miserably, almost losing his mind. Along the journey of recovery, Victor encounters the enigmatic Rasputin, a historical figure who unexpectedly becomes his ally and teacher, guiding him in the dangerous art of binding salutors. Victor reestablishes his bond with his first salutor, Upper, a silent, ever-watchful companion who has never truly left his side. Even in solitude, Victor is never truly alone with Upper. Victor's personal story intertwines with city's conflict, making him both a participant and an observer of history, with the choice to join the resistance or seek power for himself. Victor interacts with real-life characters. Here we can see Tsar Nikolai giving a speech, who played obviously a key role in shaping the history, but also history of Warsaw during this era. As a thaumaturge, Victor is not just a passive observer. He actively influences the events around him. Victor's story is designed to give players meaningful choices, allowing them to steer his actions and personality through his flaw, pride. But decisions often come with significant consequences, forcing player to weigh in the immediate benefits against long-term impact and decide who Victor ends up as being in his pursuit of power. Personal and social identity, moral dilemmas, thaumaturgy, salutors, choice and political power, or mirror the key conflicts we already talked about: identity, agency, and power. Which brings us to this lesson. In historically inspired settings, the player needs a way in, someone to connect with, to learn through, and to care about. This is where the player's avatar becomes essential. The avatar isn't just a vessel for gameplay mechanics. They are a narrative bridge between the player and the world. Victor plays exactly this role. As someone returning to Warsaw after years in exile, he's both familiar with the city and alienated from it, mirroring the player's own outsider status. This allows him to ask questions the player would ask, to observe and react in ways that feel natural, and to gradually uncover the complex social, political, and supernatural dynamics of Warsaw in the year 1905, and do so alongside the player. A well-designed avatar doesn't just exist in the setting we are building. They need to interact with it, question it, challenge it. They allow players to experience history not as a lecture, as you do so now, but as a living, breathing reality they can influence with their actions. So let's talk about reimagining history and how we approached it. The key to reimagining Warsaw are salutors. These otherworldly entities exist beyond the physical realm. lurking in the shadows, unseen in layers of reality. They are invisible to ordinary people, but powerful thaumaturges can perceive, interact with, and even bend them to their own will. These beings are not simply supernatural creatures, monsters, ghosts. They are deeply intertwined with human nature, feeding of emotions, desires, and personal weaknesses. They are neither truly benevolent or malevolent. Their nature depends on the person they inhabit and the circumstances of their existence. As you already noticed, salutors are inspired by many different stories, Slavic folklore, Jewish mysticism, and other mythological traditions. So, for example, here, Upper, Victor's first companion, first original salutor, he's a ghost-like warrior resembling a 16th century Polish noble. He represents honor twisted by bloodlust, embodying a tragic warrior doomed by his past. It's Victor's first salutor, as already mentioned, and he's connected to his pride. Here you can see the beautiful concept art made by Andrzej Wysocki. Absolutely stunning. Another example, while traversing Warsaw, Victor can encounter more salutors, such as Morana, for example, also known as Marzanna, which is Slavic beliefs was a goddess connected to the natural cycle of death and rebirth, winter and spring. In world of the Thaumaturge, she's a salutor, lurking in rivers and shadows, drawn to those who have lost purpose or hope. Here, beautiful concept by Ewa Czajkowska. And another example, Golem, a massive clay-made protector brought to life to defend the innocent and punish the guilty. Found in Jewish quarters of Warsaw and bound by ancient Kabbalistic magic. Here again, concept by Andrzej Wysocki. And another example, completely different culture, Jinn, a supernatural being from Mesopotamian, Arabian, and Persian mythologies. Traditionally, they are considered spirits of fire and air, often invisible but capable of taking various forms. In legends, they are known for their power, trickery, and unpredictability, sometimes acting as guides, but just as often as deceivers. Jinn's presence reflects the multicultural influences of the Russian Empire, which bordered the Ottoman Empire and Persia. Here on the beautiful concept, yet again by Ewa Czajkowska. Through his journey, Victor may encounter many different salutors, each offering power, temptation, or insight. But even beyond those interactions, their very existence weaves an otherworldly threat through already unstable historical reality. Their mere presence in the world invites us to ask questions. So, what if? So, what if supernatural powers influence historical movements or revolutions? As a thaumaturge, Victor has the power to sway revolutions, take a stand, and alter the course of the history. But such influence is never without consequences. His choices can lead to triumph, chaos, or tragedy for him or those around him. Yet another question, how might marginalized groups or individuals use such powers to resist the oppression or maybe exploit the system? As I already mentioned, Victor can make a stand, not only for himself, but as a leader who brings other thaumaturges out of the shadows, uniting those who once hid their power in secrecy. So how does introducing mystical elements like salutors alter the moral dynamics of historical conflicts? Victor has the opportunity to forge alliances with various factions and various people and sway Tsar's decisions, potentially altering the course of history forever. But at what cost? Which brings us to our next lesson. The fantastical elements are here to enhance the story, not replace it. They provide new ways to explore the emotional truths, conflicts, and themes already present in the historical moment. They can highlight hidden tensions, amplify personal struggles, and make abstract ideas more tangible and impactful. But those elements work best when they complement and enrich the real social, political, and cultural forces at play, rather than distract from or contradict them. For example, the presence of saluters in the early 20th century Warsaw isn't just about adding magic and spectacle to the game. It's about giving a new lens through which to examine the city's unrest, the characters' ambitions, and the fragility of power. Which brings us to our next lesson. So, how to balance fiction and history? You may have already noticed the huge attention to detail in all the slides I showed you so far. In architecture, clothing, language, the culture is essential for authentically portraying the historical Warsaw and grounding the story within its rich, complex world. Incorporating real historical figures such as Tsar Nikolai and Tsarina, Rasputin, and Georgi Skałon grounds this story firmly in reality, lending authenticity and context to the narrative. The characters created for the story also draw inspiration from real historical individuals or social movements, blending authentic traits and struggles with fictional elements. This approach allows us to resonate more deeply with themes and complexities and tensions of the era, while giving players fresh, engaging perspective on history through original characters created just for the game. Thorough research into the social and political landscape of the time is crucial to crafting a setting that feels both authentic and believable. By understanding the complexities of class struggle, power dynamics, political movements, and everyday life, the world building truly gains depth and nuance. On the other hand, integration of folklore, mythology, and supernatural powers is done in a way that complements the historical narrative. So, when incorporating fantastical elements, always think about their historical and cultural context. These elements should never feel tucked in or out of place, but instead arise naturally from the world's existing beliefs, traditions, and social realities. By grounding the fantasy in the culture and history of the setting, the story gains authenticity and resonance, allowing players to connect more deeply with the narrative. So, the key takeaways I would like you to bring home with. While exploring the modern themes through alt history, think about how alt history allows us to explore the identity. Think about how it examines power dynamics at multiple levels. At the same time, it provides the freedom to reimagine historical agency through choices the player makes along the way. Alt history, at its core, enriches storytelling by creating the world that feels both familiar and fantastical. It helps to engage player with history in a way that encourages exploration, critical thinking, and emotional investment. Games like the Thaumaturge can become a true bridge between history and fantasy, enduring relevance of historical themes in modern storytelling can be clearly seen here. And, reimagining history can shed light on contemporary issues while delivering an engaging and immersive experience. Thank you for listening.